Hi everyone! Thank you for joining us again at Big Valley Living. Tonight I'm going to make a really special meal. It's a really well known throughout our family on my dad's side. This is authentic pork schnitzel that my Oma used to make. And I made it years ago when she visited us here in Sacramento, and she gave me a big thumbs up. So I will take that endorsement, but I'd like to share this recipe with you, and I hope you and your family enjoy it as much as we do. Before we get started with preparing the meat for a few hours of marinating, I'm just going to go over the basic steps. This meal does take some planning and preparation, and I'd like to just kind of put that out there up front, okay? But I'm going to go over the ingredient list with you very quickly. And these are as close to the ingredients that Oma used. And we'll just go ahead and run through them real quick. We're going to be frying it in a cast iron skillet. And we'll be using the Crisco vegetable shortening, some seasoned salt with mixed in with some breadcrumbs for dredging it. And it's going to marinate in a mixture of evaporated milk and water and some eggs. We'll be mixing that up in a few minutes. And then last but the most important part of this is you want to have some lean and thinly cut pork. I've heard that you can make it with chicken, so if you want to try that, that's fine. But the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to use a meat mallet, and we're going to pound this out even thinner so that it fries up quickly and crispy. So actually what I'm going to do before I start getting the meat prepared is I'm going to put together the wet ingredients and put them into the marinator that we're going to use. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Carnation evaporated milk, and new cooks or people who are really young, this is called a church key. And I'm going to open up this can. I have shaken it well as instructed on the top of the can. I'm going to dump this in here into this bowl, and to that I am actually going to be adding one full cup of water with it. I'm going to go and get some filtered water. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crack 2 eggs, and I'm going to add that to it. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to show you a little trick here. So you never quite know if your eggs are going to be perfect or not, okay? So, and you don't want to get any shells in there. So a good rule of thumb is to dump an egg into a single little separate bowl before putting it into, like if you're baking or something like that. This is also a good rule of thumb. So I have 2 eggs. And they both look good, and I did it without any shells. Imagine that. Okay, we're going to go ahead, and I am going to add just a touch of seasoned salt to this. I'd say it's maybe a teaspoon or 2. So I'm going to whisk that together real quick. And I may add another egg just to help it bond to the meat, because this is quite a bit of liquid. We're actually going to have my brother and my sister-in-law over tonight, and we all like this for leftovers the next day. So, all right, so we have this old Tupperware marinator that we've had for, oh gosh, 20-ish years, maybe longer. And we've always used it for schnitzel. So I'm pouring the liquid mixture into this so that as I get the meat prepared, we're just going to, lay it in there and layer it. Okay, we are working with a pork product, and I really don't want to contaminate my kitchen and make a big mess. So something that we always do is we just put the meat inside of a 1-gallon freezer baggie. Freezer baggies work better because they are thicker than a normal baggie. And I am not going to use this pounded side because I just really am hoping that I can do this without breaking through the baggie. Okay, this little cutlet is just about perfect, okay? It's about twice the size as it was in surface area. and you can almost see through it. We want this not paper thin, but we don't want it more than about 1/8 of an inch thick, okay? And it's hard to get a butcher to cut it that thin. I did get them to cut it about 1/4 of an inch thick, and so now I'm just going to go ahead and get all these put together, and we'll be back in a second. Alrighty, and we have all of the meat done. Just kind of pull what was on the bottom up near the top, because what we want to do is make sure that all of the meat is well saturated and covered by all of this liquid, okay? Now, if you don't have this ancient Tupperware marinator, don't you worry about it. You can put this into a baggie, preferably one that doesn't have any holes. I wouldn't use the one that I had just used to pound the meat out thinner. So anyway, just go ahead and make sure it's covered. Another thing that you could use would be like a glass baking dish. I think that that would be perfectly acceptable. Make sure to cover it with plastic, because we are going to set this in the refrigerator for a minimum of 2 hours, and that is bare minimum, up to, you could do it overnight if you wanted to. I get a little wishy-washy about pork, so I typically make it the same day. I have my Tupperware sealed, and I'm going to put it into the refrigerator for a few hours to soak up all of the marinade. If you're using a gallon baggie, just make sure that you have all your liquid in there. Move as much air out of the bag before you seal it as you possibly can, because that'll keep a good amount of the liquid on the actual meat. And the same thing for a glass baking dish if you choose to use that. The next time you see us, we will be getting ready to cook this schnitzel. See you in a bit. Okie dokie, so the schnitzel has been soaking for a few hours in the mixture that we put it in earlier. And this is pretty much how I set up the frying station. So I'm going to take the meat out of here, and then I'm going to dredge it. And I don't have oil in the pan yet because I'm going to go over that with you in a minute. But that is what it should look like before we put it into the pan of hot oil. So we'll be right back. I have my cast iron pan preheating on the stove at about 7 on my electric, so that's a good solid medium high. And again, we're using Crisco vegetable oil. And you want it, when it's melted, to be thick enough in the pan, or deep enough in the pan, that the schnitzel will be submerged, because we're going to cook it on one side and then we're going to flip it and we're going to cook it on the other side. This ended up being roughly a half a can of a 48-ounce Crisco jar, okay? So again, that's the one I used. We're going to go ahead and let it heat up and start cooking here in a second. So the oil has melted, and I'm not quite sure if you can see, but the oil is shimmering a little bit, and it's just kind of starting to smoke. So I turned the pan down to 5 because cast iron retains heat, and it'll just get hotter and hotter, and we could risk it getting too hot and burning. So to make sure that it's hot enough, I'm going to take this cutlet that we breaded a few minutes ago, and I'm just going to kind of set it in there and see if it's done. This first one's going to probably, oh, that's perfect. Okay. So I'm going to get a couple more ready. It's all the way submerged, and this is probably going to hold 2 at a time. And another tip is to keep one hand that you use for pulling the meat out of the wet mixture. Keep your other hand dry, and that way you don't end up with 2 goopy messes of hands. And here comes number 2. I'm going to put that in there with a dry hand. You can hear it sizzling. Now the pan's going to start releasing a little bit of heat, so it's going to sound really hot for a minute and then it's going to go down. Another thing I want to bring to your attention is that you need to have a plate or something lined with paper towels because obviously it's cooking in grease. And when we pull that out of the pan when it's completely crispy, we're going to sprinkle a little fresh lemon on each one. And that is non-negotiable as well. You need to have a little bit of lemon on there to bring out the flavors. Not too much because you want it to stay crispy. I'm pressing down where it's wanting to raise up a little bit. There's plenty of grease in here, or oil, so you don't have to worry too much about that cavity not having oil. I just wanted to see what the color looked like. So this is going to get quite a bit darker. Now we're at a good fry. So this is that's about as bubbly as you want that to get. I'm actually going to turn my pan down to 4. And then there's room right here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw a third one in. Just keep track of which is which. The color will tell you. It's also worth noting that you could use an electric skillet like my Oma did and keep it at about 360 to 375 because when you put the cold meat into the oil that's hot, it will bring it down to about 350 and then take it back up to temperature. I have adjusted the heat a couple of times because on the electric stove, you know, the heat's going to, well, on any stove, the heat's going to go up and down, fluctuate a little bit. So this is exactly what you want that schnitzel to look like. It's golden brown. We know it's cooked all the way through because it's been cooking for about 10 to 12 minutes. I am going to go ahead and put it on a cloth to drain. I'm going to squeeze the tiniest bit of lemon juice on it. And I'm going to go do a little bit more cooking. As you're cooking the meat, you're going to see that you're going to get just a tiny bit of the breading that's going to come off. And if you scrape, you just put that onto a piece of paper towel. That will keep that from burning, settling on the bottom and burning. You don't want to scorch it. Okay, we have 2 more lovely cutlets coming off. Again, shake off a little of the excess oil and make sure to put that little bit of lemon juice on top. You can see that again. And this one is also ready. Shake off the excess oil. I think you're seeing a pattern here, okay? So I know you're getting the hang of it. I will not put more than about 4 pieces without having separate pieces of paper between them. And if you're making a lot of schnitzel, put your oven on warm and put your schnitzel in a single layer on a baking rack. That keeps it from getting soggy. And just keep it warm though, you don't want it to keep cooking. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to come back in just a minute when that cutlet is done and I'll show you what it all looks like. Well, there you have it. Got a nice little dinner with some homemade schnitzel. And we did a side of roasted rosemary and garlic potatoes, a lovely salad with homemade lemon juice dressing. Check out that video. And we hope that you guys have a great night. Thanks again for visiting Big Valley Living. Please do not forget to share this video with your friends if you like it. Make sure that you hit the like and the subscribe. And if you'd like to receive more videos like this, please make sure to hit the little bell. Ding! Ding!